What day is it? It's Tuesday. Heyo, Tuesday, February 25th, 2020. This is Business Pants. I'm Damian Rollis. That's Matt Mascardi. We are live.
You just really perked up for that, by the way. I
Yeah,
really like how perky you just got. It was
I had to,
inspiring.
we're doing a show. We're doing a professional. This is a professional enterprise. I'm gonna start the timer.
Do we really have to call it professional? That holds us to a standard we might not be able to live up to.
Yeah, and professional also insinuates that there's some kind of transaction, like a financial transaction.
Yeah, there's
Is that
none of
what-
those.
So we're amateur. We're like
We're professional amateurs.
we're a bloated softball league.
What's on the agenda?
I would like to know. Is there an agenda card? Okay, we're going to talk. Unfortunately, once again, we got to go coronavirus because of a stock market plunge that happened yesterday and is happening as we speak. And then we're going to go back into our big fuzzy bag of cronyism because Boeing has some news that nobody else seems to care about, but we care about here at Business Pants.
Honestly, it is the kind of news that just like it gets like a byline in like in like a new PR newswire journal, and no one cares about. Let's do coronavirus so that we can not do coronavirus again today. All right. I have a new sound effect for you. You ready? Coronavirus. Here we go.
So what? I don't.
It's like a boxing
cow?
ring.
Am I a boxer? Okay, I'm a boxer. Okay. The stock market fell over 1,000 points yesterday, so that represents more than 3%. We can talk about a little later what the hell that means. Today, it's already down. What is it down? I'm going to refresh my webpage. It is already down almost 500 points, so that's almost another 2%. With travel stocks and those with heavy reliance on supply chains in China falling more than the broader market. That's a big duh. CNBC also took the opportunity to conflate the nosedive with good old Bernie, speculating that healthcare stocks fell sharply following Bernie's big win in Nevada over the weekend. Although I looked pretty closely, CNBC did. I noticed that they did not make the suggestion that the healthcare industry itself might be responsible for causing fears in the electorate that catching the wrong virus could suddenly bankrupt a law-abiding family of 5. But that's a whole nother story. So Matt, let me ask you this: what took Wall Street so long to dive? Is it simply a case of who cares? It's just a bunch of Asians, but Italy, not Italy, or is it rather simply a case of oh no, our supply chains? This might affect our beautiful bottom lines. And this is the only thing we actually care about because our beautiful bonuses are based on short-term nonsense and market manipulation. Or maybe it's just an opportunity to dump some bad stock buys, like a good old-fashioned Friday news dump. So, Matt, is it all the above, none of the above, something else? What do you think?
Well, I do like. So it's worth saying that I do like. We should stop using the word supply chain because supply chain. It is like Wall Street just woke up and realized there were like humans in the supply chain that were.
And let me cut you off for a second there because we talked about this yesterday. We hear the word supply chain. I say the word supply chain to my friends. Yes, I still actually have friends left.
No, you don't.
And they stare at me even more uncomfortably than they usually stare at me.
Which is pretty uncomfortable.
But then when I explain what the hell a supply chain is, that it actually involves human beings, then they start to warm up and they're like, "Oh, right, there are people involved with supply chains."
I mean, it is like like all the earnings announcements and all the announcements since about coronavirus really kind of circulate around the idea that there's, quote, supply chain disruption. Goldman actually called this a near-term correction and said in the same statement about coronavirus that it would cause, quote, non-linear effects. These are all like Wall Street code words for human beings who make your crap are dramatically affected by a pandemic virus, right? Like that's code.
And we're big here on trying to rename bullshit because this is like a marketing genius name. And I think supply chain should be on top of our list now because we gotta have a new way of referring to that because it does. When you hear supply chain, I mean, you don't think of human beings?
And you don't. You think of processes, which is a nice way of kind of covering up the fact that it's usually low cost labor building your stuff. I mean, it's not uniformly that, but it is it is a lot that. But I think because you pulled out two things. One is the supply chain kind of
Racism. Yeah.
conversation, right? Like there is this sort of like, so we can just rename it, humans who make stuff. So the Dow and the market effectively woke up and said, "Oh, there are humans who make stuff. That's terrifying."
And yeah.
And then second is the I would you call it latent racism? I mean, there is a
It's either
let's call it
it's either
Western focus.
yeah, it's either xenophobia, it's racism, or yeah, it's just a good old fashioned East versus West battle.
Because it was very telling that like the news cycle started to spin coronavirus in Italy as
Uh-huh.
getting out of control.
It's here.
It's
Yeah.
here. It's in Europe, and I read multiple stories that was like, can Europe contain the coronavirus? And it's not. It doesn't feel coincidental that as soon as it's like a 9-hour flight away instead of a 20-hour
Yeah.
flight away, people are all sort of like freaking out that this is a real thing and not just some China thing.
See, this is where all the you liberal do-gooders and all you ESG do-gooders screwed us because Europe has an amazingly efficient and wonderful interrail system. Its trains are glorious, and that means it's just going to spread coronavirus just like that.
It's basically a giant Venus system
Yeah,
for
they don't have big
viral
SUVs.
pandemics.
Yeah, they screwed us all over.
But Italy is not
So
like a supplier to the world for like it's not a huge manufacturer of the goods in the way that China is. It is a manufacturer, right? Like but it's
look
not
up,
like the hidden manufacturer.
right?
And I heard on Squawk Box just yesterday they were talking about like if this goes to Italy and Germany, what does that mean? And those are
Mm,
major manufacturers in Europe.
right.
And it's like, well, it's already we didn't care when we called it supply chain, but now we're calling it like manufacturers in Europe, and it suddenly
Well, it's
freaks the
code
market
for
out.
white. Yeah, well, Europe is code for white people.
I
I
think,
mean,
and I think that that's an element. You also mentioned Bernie. I
I
mean,
always got to mention Bernie. I mean,
but isn't this like like do you think honestly, do you think that the market is somewhere in the back of their head saying this could fuel the rise of Bernie's Medicare for all kind of conversation? And we know the market
it's
is desperately afraid of the socialist rhetoric that is Bernie. Not that
look,
they were
honestly,
desperately afraid of Trump's socialist rhetoric too, because he's
yeah.
populist in the extreme on the other side, right?
I don't necessarily want to go too deep into it, and I know they're not going to cover this tonight in the debates because so the Democratic presidential candidates, for all of you who don't live in the United States, I'm looking at you, our Finnish fans and our Korean fans.
Number 40 in Finland right now.
They're going to be debating tonight, but I think it's an important crossover. I mean, that we have underinsured and uninsured people in this country who are too poor to go and pay the bill for an ER visit or for the co-pays and will get sick and just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna ride it out, stay home. That is clearly a problem in the time of a pandemic. It has to be.
Well, let's say that the three things that,
Has to be.
well, let's say the three things you pointed out are basically wake up calls and like describing part of why the market might be reacting.
Mm,
It's also impossible to disassociate it with there has been such a ridiculous bull run. Like investors have been so happy.
yeah,
3 months ago, they were literally out saying the consumer is strong in America and the world. Everything is amazing. There's no reason why you couldn't think this would go on forever now. Like the market was sort of also, if you think of it as a collection of people who are waiting for the other shoe to drop, this feels other shoeish, and I'm sure they're all just kind of like get the hell out while we've made some money. And that's where it like disassociates from reality. Like
right.
market has been so disassociated from what people are that now they're all like, oh crap, people sell, sell,
All right.
sell. It feels good.
Speaking of people, let's move on. Get Bell me out. Boeing, right?
Yay!
Not the first time I've said that word.
I was
Boeing.
so afraid we wouldn't get to a Boeing story.
And this will be the only place that's going to cover this in depth. I promise you that. Boeing announced that directors Edward Liddy, one of Matt's favorites,
Ooh.
and Mike Zefirovsky
Yeah.
will
Mikey.
retire at the plane maker's annual shareholder meeting and not stand for re-election. To replace the retiring directors, Boeing has nominated Qualcomm CEO Steve Mollenkopf and former United Technologies CFO Akhil Johri. Before I hand this off to Matt to see if any of this smells like a big moldy bag of cronyism, I ask myself, do the professional or educational backgrounds of these new directors reveal any specific expertises which would suggest an acumen suitable to handle the monumental crisis at Boeing? And I think the easy answer is no.
Oh.
Jory is a numbers guy, big whoop. And
Oh.
Mollenkopf sells semiconductors, so I don't know why I care about that. So I'd call this a missed opportunity. So Matt, who are these guys, and could they possibly represent Boeing's new culture, or is this just more of the same old greatest hits from CEO Dennis Muhlenberg's mixtape? What do you think, Matt?
I do. Does he have a mixtape? Is that
He
like
does now.
is it like
Does
being handed
now.
out on the street? I want to come back to the question and just because I think like we talk a lot about Boeing. We've talked a lot about Boeing here, and there's sort of a like, should anyone care? Like, is this the point in the live stream or the podcast where people are like, oh my God, Boeing again?
Like,
But
yeah.
let's remind people why we talk about it, because effectively, there's an underlying question of all of these boards, which is we have a working theory that no one gets hired unless they're known entities. There's not like a Rooney rule for boards. If you know what the Rooney rule is, it's basically in the NFL. When they go to hire a coach, they have to interview at least one person of color, because it was that ridiculous that they wouldn't even interview people of color. There is no Rooney rule for boards. There's no minimum qualification for like, you have to find somebody who's not in your sphere. So the question is, how likely is Boeing's board? And I think you basically summed it up. How likely is Boeing's existing board? How likely is any board to nominate new people who would challenge the existing culture or the power dynamics there, right? Like, how likely is that?
Especially for the 500 biggest companies we're talking about, the S&P 500. Right?
Oh yeah, the Boeing is like one of the most important companies
One of
for
the giants.
U.S. GDP. Like, forget S&P 500.
Right.
So we'll go one by one. And
Okay.
just as a quick reminder, the reason why Ed Liddy was one of my favorite is he sat on the Boeing board for 10 years. He's also been on Abbott and 3M's board for a long time. Zavarovsky is, he's been on the Boeing board forever. These are people who are on the nominating committee of Boeing. I just love that they're old white kind of dudes who keep getting jobs. But let's go one by one with these new guys. Okay. Number one, Akhil Johri. I'm going to go through the paper that I can find on them. Akhil Johri, ex-United Technologies. He was their CFO. He was their advisor to the CEO, whatever that means, which sounds like an amazing gig. Is there a reason why we don't have that gig?
I think we do. It's our cats.
I need to advise more CEOs. So props to Boeing for picking somebody who is actually a person of color. I mean, we got two dudes, so we didn't diversify. Two outgoing white dudes, but we got to give props where props are due.
It's something.
It's something.
Sure.
It's a thing.
Thing.
And this is actually worth saying that this is where sort of ESG often stops, because it's like, we get a percentage of women on boards. We've started to edge into a percentage of people of color on boards. And then it's like, okay, well, there's a high percentage of women on boards. Congratulations. We're done. We're ESG. We're very diverse. I'm not going to stop there. I'm actually going to figure out what these dudes are about.
Sure.
Jory worked at United Technologies, UTC, for 30 years, and he worked with their CEO, Greg Hayes, for a lot of it. Greg Hayes sits on the Business Roundtable board. Of course, the Business Roundtable is involved here. The Business Roundtable is central to everything. He sits on the Business Roundtable board with Boeing board members Lynn Good of Duke Energy. And Business Roundtable is the largest client of the Duberstein Group. Ken Duberstein was the architect of the Boeing board for the last 2 decades. No exaggeration. 2 full decades of Ken Duberstein creating what we have now, the mess we have now. So all of these people are already directly in contact with Jory. Jory worked with the UTC board as CFO, no doubt. So he probably knows their board members, including Ellen Kullman, who sits on Amgen's board with CEO Robert Bradway, who is also a current Boeing board member. So lest you think I cannot connect almost instantaneously the person of color that they chose to the Boeing sphere of influence and or relationships, I can.
Right.
That's dude number 1. That's just the first guy.
Okay.
So any thoughts about the first guy? Do we care? I mean, it feels like okay.
I don't know if I really care. 2 things that stick out. He's a numbers guy. I think one of the retiring directors is a numbers guy, so I guess they need a numbers guy. And the other thing all I can really think of is that the Business Roundtable must have a database on their intranet, and that these companies have access to, right? It's like, oh, we need a director. Who's on the list? Okay, let's just go with this guy.
So I'm actively requesting a login to the Business Roundtable database. I feel like it's forthcoming.
Yeah.
So let's go to dude number 2. And I want to stress here, this took me literally 2 hours this morning to figure this out. This is not like me doing 4 years of research. So why this isn't in like CNBC and they're not saying Boeing effectively hires 2 people who are directly connected to Boeing for board member. I don't know why it's not there, but it's not. It's not.
Because CNBC is not in the business of disruption, I suppose.
Well, maybe
right?
they didn't have a Business Roundtable login, so they didn't
right.
know that the connection existed. So dude number 2, Steve Mollenkopf,
Okay.
of CEO of Qualcomm. Now, Boeing and Qualcomm don't actually have as obvious a connection. Mollenkopf isn't directly related to Boeing in quite the same way. It's not like, knows everyone on the Business Roundtable board, gets hired, which I don't know for a fact is true of Jory, but I can infer from at least the paper. Until you actually...
But Qualcomm is a Business Roundtable member, though.
Yes. Well, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay.
But he's not on the board of the Business Roundtable.
Oh, come on.
Okay.
Same database.
Let's do the indirect relationships. Because if you look at Qualcomm's board, so Mollenkopf sits on Qualcomm's board. He's their CEO. You got a dude like Neil Smith, who's also a board member, vice chair of Comcast. Comcast is has given Ken Duberstein's lobbying group more than $5 million since 1999. One of the single biggest clients they have, including $1.6 million in just the last 5 years.
Okay.
If I need to remind you, 40 seconds ago, I said Ken Duberstein's name because he's the architect of the Boeing board.
Yeah.
Also on Qualcomm's board, Harish Manwani.
Sure.
I don't know Harish. Could be a really super nice guy. Harish is also on the Blackstone board. Worth noting that Blackstone is where current Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun worked up until last year, and outgoing board member Mike Zafirovsky, and who's also on the nominating committee, works now as a special advisor. Everybody's a fucking special advisor.
Yeah, that's another code for staying on the payroll.
Can I just? I made a plea to join a board last year. I made the wrong plea. I want to be a special advisor.
Okay.
So notification, upcoming segment, becoming a special advisor to somebody on a company, getting on the payroll. So there are indirect connections, and I don't even have to go deep to talk about the Business Roundtable. On the board of the Business Roundtable are both Ginny Rometty, IBM CEO, and Safra Katz, Oracle CEO. These are two tech CEOs. They are 2 of the 4 Technology CEO Council board members, whose chair is Steve Mollenkopf, incoming Boeing board member from Qualcomm. So,
right.
It took me. These people are like less than 2 phone calls away from Boeing's board. So back to the original question, okay? I'm gonna ring a bell on myself. Back to
Okay.
the original question. The thing to think about here, and I'm going to start our outro music because I want you to answer while we outro.
But you want me to answer quickly?
I want you. No, we've got plenty of outro music, so
Okay.
take your time here.
Okay.
Okay. This took me 2 hours of research to find out how wide the net was that they had to go looking for these people. Like, it's your buddy's friend. Like, that's as wide as they had to go. Are these people likely to deeply challenge what sounds like a highly dysfunctional culture at one of the U.S.'s most important contributors to GDP in Boeing? Are these the people that should be there?
And that hurdles people through space.
Now, let's say they're fucking geniuses. Let's say they're amazing, and let's say they didn't know any of the people beforehand. That's totally possible. I am strictly looking at paper, but from an optics standpoint, is this, as an investor who you want chosen on the board that needs to make fairly monumental decisions about this company?
Do you know how I know it's not enough? Because I went to look at the press release put out by Boeing itself, and so it had the opportunity to sell these two as a way to create new culture, to get Boeing out of its crisis, and nothing. Crickets. I mean, they had the opportunity from their communications team to tell all of us, stakeholders, shareholders, whoever, idiots like us, that these two were specially appointed to help, and nothing.
Let me read to you what Larry Kellner, who's Boeing's current chair, said. Our announcement today reflects our, quote, rigorous succession planning, which ensures we maintain the right balance of skills and experience to effectively govern the company. And then said of the two of them, they are proven leaders at complex global enterprises, and together will bring significant additional safety, engineering, software, and financial expertise to our board. Nowhere does he mention that these two people will actually challenge the cultural problems inherent.
Right. And that's the key task of the new CEO, right? Challenging the culture.
He said he made that his task explicitly. So
yeah, I think succession planning that Kellner is referring to there is a Post-it note on his computer monitor with the password to the Business Roundtable database director.
Is the password the word password?
I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's Business Pants. Do you have more for us?
No. I will add, just so people are aware of this, that these directors are nominated, right? There's actually an opportunity for shareholders at the next annual meeting, which will probably be the end of April. They could actually just vote no.
They could vote no. Imagine a situation in which shareholders
It's an election, people.
Actually listened to some research and voted no.
Yeah, so shareholders, if you're pissed off about Bernie, you're scared about Bernie, you don't know what to do about it, why don't you exercise your voting control at Boeing and just say no to these guys? I
love it. ISS and Glass Lewis, the proxy advisors. You're pissed off that you're in the middle of an SEC battle where you're going to get regulated? Make your advice say no to these guys, because it doesn't make sense as to govern what is maybe one of the most important companies in this country. They shouldn't come from the direct sphere of Ken Duberstein.
I like saying Duber. All right, that's it. That's all I got.
Love it. I'm Matt Moscardi. You are Damian Rollis. We are Free Float Media. It was February 25th of 2020. This was the news. If you like what you heard, subscribe. Listen to us all the time. Tell your friends about us, because we are amazing in Finland. And we also subscribe to our sister show, The Market Medium. I have an interview with Jeff Sonnenfeld that I did. He's an amazing, interesting Yale, professor. He's like
Management
a CEO guru. He weighs in on we're gonna do some stuff about CEO messiahism. But we'll come back at you with that. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks, Damien.